going on because I appreciate his take on all of it. And you may have seen some of him before. So, Brian, it started with a text he gave me about his gut instinct working. And I went, we've got to do this. So, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just tell your whole story. The
And we
guy,
just we were talking about that the first video we did last week, but there's a lot of those moments. But what came up in conversation was when I was doing, generically speaking, I was doing a background for a police candidate. Something didn't feel right with this guy. Just something didn't feel right. And Connecticut, I don't know about other states, but the whole process consists of a polygraph, a full background, meeting with a psychologist, taking all these written psychological exams, and then meeting with a psychologist afterwards. And so we had a candidate who um, something just did not feel right with this guy. But it's almost like you can't defy the laws of physics. You know what I mean? So he went. I told this to the chief. He went to his polygraph. He passed with flying colors. And I said, I don't know. Something isn't right with this guy. There's something energetically off with him. So at the same time, now I'm gonna parallel this. Every time I do a release of records, when I'm doing a background on a candidate, I have them sign a release of records which allows me to, contact other agencies or other businesses. And I always get that piece of paper notarized. It's a legal form. Well, this one time I didn't because at the top they said it's not necessary. You don't need that. And I said, well, I've never not had a form notarized in 32 years of policing. So it parallels this story because there was one agency that would not release the records to me. For example, when I do a background on an individual, specifically with police departments, I want to know where they've lived, they've worked, they've gone to school, where they've breathed, and I contact those police departments in those jurisdictions where a person has had any contact. A lot of times when you put out the requests, it trickles back when it trickles back. But there was one agency that, because I didn't have the form notarized, refused to give me the information. So I had to go back and try to get this, try and get this form notarized for this one specific agency. So guy takes a polygraph, passes. And I said to the chief, I don't, something wrong with this guy. So he's like, well, he passes poly. You're right. So then he had the psychological exams, the written exercises, and talked to the psychologist. And the next day I was in the chief's office. I'm like, what happened? He goes, he passed everything. I'm like, God, there's something. Okay. It's almost like I can't defy the laws of physics. Okay. He passed. And he was set to go do a pre-physical fitness test at the academy in a few weeks from this date. Probably like 15 minutes later, that agency that wouldn't give me the information calls me and says, hey, are you sitting down? And I said, I am now. What's going on? Well, this person was a suspect in a major crime. It was a sex assault. Gave a written confession to them. And I am like, how? First off, I wasn't even really concerning with my gut feeling on it. That was secondary to how in the heck can a person go through an entire process. And so I, brought this individual back in, and basically what this individual said to me was, well, I put that on my mind. I don't remember that. How do you not remember something that big? Like, this is crazy. Now, I wouldn't have had any information to go on because that agency hadn't given me the information. Nothing came up in his background other than this, other than that feeling, that gut feeling that something wasn't right. And so it was just kind of a secondary conversation you and I were having, because there was other cases that I was reminded of. This in particular, there's another case that popped up in my head this morning, that gut feeling, where I got a guy who I could tell you that story if you want later on. But this one stood out. You do the best you can do, but unfortunately, sometimes people fall through the cracks, and it's very statistically, it's probably damn near impossible for that to happen, but it can happen. But it was gut feeling that I was like I thought I was onto something there.
You were on to something
So
and he never
yeah.
got approved of, correct? Right? He
Oh
was
no. Oh no.
right. And
No.
exactly. And how did the chief of police all along take your comments, receive them?
Um, I think the chief of police respects a lot of the people, all the people that are in our agency based on their experiences coming in and whatnot. Um, but again, it's almost like how do you defy if he's passing these tests, he can take my word, but it's almost like it's almost like when a medium or a psychic use you to bring them into a case, I have to go on what's in front of me, what the evidence is in front of you. And so he listened to me and didn't dismiss at all what I was saying. But he can't go on a hunch. You can't dismiss somebody on a hunch because that brings up lawsuits and things like that. So afterwards, I think he almost want to fall off his chair also.
Yes. I'd like to share what I hear from you about that. As a psychic working with law enforcement, everything you say resonates. And I hope people understand that we all know in any field whatsoever, people fall through the cracks. And why? The question really I have is, well, how do they do that? So, pardon me. One, your gut instinct is also because you live at uh, what I'll call a loving frequency of belief and kindness and compassion, but also savvy mixed in, base knowledge mixed in, discipline of thought and caring, and not dismissing what you get emotionally. So the other part is you walk in a room, folks. You ever walk in a new room, party or gathering or work or anything, and you can't go near one person. It just, yeah, right? And then later you find out that person and why you felt, oh God, no. Right? So everybody's had it, but people who you're talking about, Brian, don't always like, I don't know if the psychologist picked up anything, but just went by the book. I can remember when I sat in the acute psych unit on Wednesdays at noon, we had Dr. Edward Kaufman, director of New York State Psychiatry, would teach the residents in training in psychiatry in my unit, and I would be with them. And I had never read a book on any of it. They were book read, most of them. The only two that weren't, one had studied meditation, yoga, everything he could think of. He was wide open and he got more out of everything than the people next to him, right? And then there was another one who had read all about the myth of mental illness and had read other things other than the correct text, I'll say. And I had not read any of that yet. I hadn't gotten into all of it other than the history as a kid of insane asylums because I was always curious. The three of us didn't need textbooks. We trusted it. And Ed trusted that because we could prove it. And so the key I hear from you is somewhere along the line, you have to prove everything out. And
Yeah, I
you lucked into the fact that one agency said
I
no, and
did.
that raised the antenna even higher. And
Yeah,
I'm
but I didn't.
hoping,
But I didn't put the dots together though. I didn't. That
but you didn't,
agency, I didn't think the
you,
dots were going to connect.
but you never met him. So,
Correct.
right? So what you
Correct.
were dealing with more, we talked about it. I talk about this one all the time. I had a friend, dear friend, many years. He was a PhD in psychotherapy. He sent me a book once. He said, "This is for you. You'll love it." Dr. Alice Miller. And he highlighted the part of how psychics become psychics early in life, a lot of them because of severe trauma. And so it it makes for the algorithms of the brain and the mind and the heart and the soul and the whatever, trying to figure out what's happening, what's coming, to see if we're safe, not safe. Is the country safe, not safe? Is my neighbor safe, not safe? Am I safe? Not. So it's all that. And they're constantly trying to sort it out. You have that in you. You've always had it. You have the antennas. So we don't need the photo. We don't need the presence. We need the energetic field that stands out sharply in an odd way. And what you said about that candidate and how, I don't recall, reminds me of Richard Pryor many years ago, for those who don't know, a comedian who stood on stage and said, so your hand's in the cookie jar and your mom shouting at you and saying, don't touch the cookies as you're gathering the cookie, and you're going, I'm not. And it kind of sums up how, and I thought about that after you sent, and we conversed about the case of the person who did not get accepted. Jerry Lewis, not a comedian, polygrapher, 23 years, I think, something at the time. He wrote a reference letter. I put it up on my website because what he said was the only case he ever did a mistake was the one I corrected. I didn't meet the killer. I never met him. But energetically, it was obvious, right? And so I know that he went just like the polygrapher, the psychologist, the psychological testing. He went by the book. So they told him she died at 11 p.m. or 11:30 something. Had he gone on his own kind of feel, I think he would have gotten it because she died hours later. I got that she died hours later. So that's the difference between energetic field pickup, right? And what you're talking about, physics and proof you have to have. We all get that, and we need to have some adaptability to put both together in anything. Anyone house hunting, trying to rent a place, energetic fields have to match with, if something feels off to you about the realtor, if something, pardon me, realtors, I happen to love most of you. I don't know all of you, but in any situation where you're making a determination, you feel stuck, I don't think you're really stuck. I think you're listening to something that is conflicting to what is being shown, right? And so
Yeah. And I
that's
don't
how
think
you
it,
weren't
and it
stuck,
doesn't pan out.
right?
And that's a good point because usually down the road you'll have that aha moment when you look back and you're like, okay, that's it usually pans out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called. I remembered one day where I went for something and I went, I get it. Not hindsight, looking back, smacking myself. Yay. Not foresight. I didn't get that. I stayed in the moment and I got the right answer. So a lot of times we're overthinking, right? But you weren't. And you're used to getting into that space in you. So what I hear, if anybody's curious about how to do the right thing for themselves, there's a certain kind of discipline we all have when we know we have insight, and it may conflict with what the world is telling us, which has happened often for me years ago. I mean, I remember, again, like you, um, there were 4 law enforcement agents. One of them had asked me to come. The other 3 wished I had never been. And immediately I looked at all 3 and I thought, oops, how do I get out of this? I do not want to be near them. But I didn't conflict with me about it. I recognized that there was something very off about them. And it turned out they didn't know anything about that kind of investigation. But that happened in several states where I recognized that they didn't know very much about how to investigate something because they had never done it before and nobody cared. I don't know how you stop and help others get that in your system, for instance. When your chief knows how successful you have been in your cases and how diligent you are, how disciplined, and how intuitive you are, gut instinct, hunch, call it whatever. The best of all law enforcement have good gut instincts. A hunch is kind of iffy to me because it's not so clear, but a gut instinct makes it sharper. I don't know if that makes sense to people and differentiate, but it does. And so you have that. And I know I have it in the ways I care about being disciplined, which is why we have consistent response from our own soul to our daily life in that way. Where I don't is not being stuck. It's being, no, don't feel like it. Okay, I got hidden stuff I must deal with. Honesty. So the guy you're speaking of who said, I don't remember, of course he remembers. Few states are rare, right?
Right. Of course.
And most of them are cover-ups, and most of them are hidden trauma they have had, granted. But the other part of all of it is whether they are wanting to be a law enforcement agent or a rogue, I'll call them law enforcement agent who thinks he can do or she can do anything they feel like doing, regardless of what's going on, uh, and cause upheavals everywhere. All of it still stems from trauma, usually, whether it's in utero, whether it's epigenetic, whatever, nobody knows. And for each one, it's different, right? You put it all together. But I don't know how you help them break open to truth. It's
I
difficult.
I've been I've been humbled a lot, let me tell you. And there was excuse me, there was a case that I gave my opinion on involving a victim. And now when I discuss cases with my peers, people have been working 20, 10, 20, 30 years, we should be able to speak candidly about the case and whether we think the victim is a real victim, not discounting anything, but based on our experience. Now, despite that, despite what our opinion is, we should also still be able to continue that work. You know what I mean? Like, so I had said something to one of the supervisors, actually as a chief, about a case, and it almost came out as, how dare you say that? And I said, look, I'm, but because I think in his mind he felt like by me saying it, it was a biased opinion. But I'm not. I didn't come out and say that to him. I've done this job 32 years. I can still have opinions on things and still be extremely professional and continue the work based on what the evidence. I mean, we follow the evidence, and I have to do that. That's what the job is. Um, but I just learned that in this particular case that I'm talking about, I just sometimes don't say things because it was a very touchy feely subject that he didn't.
Yeah.
It was a touchy feely subject, and I didn't feel like the victim was being honest about being the victim.
Okay,
For my
good.
own person.
So the person you were talking with, I'm sorry, but the person you were talking with took it personally that it
Yeah,
wasn't the same
yeah,
as your thought. He had a
yeah.
different, therefore, how
Like
could you insult
exactly.
me?
And like, how dare you?
Okay,
How
so
dare you? But
wait a minute. Let's say you find that true,
Mhm,
that the person is that way, and they have a responsible position themselves.
mhm.
I'm looking back, and thinking
Yeah,
of what you said to when I was a young nurse and I became a head nurse fast, then a supervisor by 20. I mean, it was all crazy. And then I ran units and ran whatever. And I thought, what do you do when they feel insulted by simply saying your own take on something, right?
yeah, yeah.
I-
I actually, Nancy, I went back and I had a conversation with him, a
Good.
couple days later, and I said, listen, because and I said, look, I should be able to, that I've been doing this for so long that I'm very extremely professional about any victim in any case. That's just what's, and it's professional as an agency, it's professional to the people we serve. But I should also be able to have a professional opinion and be able to still do my job professionally. I'm not saying that because I have a professional opinion that I'm biased, I'm not going to continue with the evidence being presented. That is absolutely absurd. I 100% will. And I think so. I went back and had a conversation with the chief about that a few days later and said, listen, I don't mean any disrespect. I'm just 100%. I'm going to do my job, but I also have a feeling on where this is. And I should be able to have that feeling and be able to talk about it among my peers and be able to do my job professionally. It was kind of like one of those moments where
Wow.
I said, okay, maybe I won't express myself as much,
Yeah, but
but
no,
then
that
that's not
should
the answer
change it.
either.
Right.
No,
No, and
right.
that wouldn't be you. And that's my point. It's one of the reasons I love holding workshops more and more over years, because I think we have to plant seeds. And I look back to what I could have done to help some of the people who were so inappropriate. I was very, very blessed most of the time with not just staff, but people who had the same positions or higher being very good and very ethical and very anything. And you could say whatever you wanted, except for one or two. And I look back at those one or two and say, if I had to do it over again, how do you plant seeds is what you just said, because
Yeah,
it's not a matter of changing them, but for them to understand there is no point in my not assessing based on my own conclusions, my knowledge, my experience, and it may not be exactly the same as yours. And so I can't thank you enough for jumping on, because when I heard what you were saying, it was people have to hear what can happen in the best of circumstances. And you just hope that throughout the world, there are people like Brian who can say it, feel it. And because I believe that your consistency of spiritual purpose in your job allowed the federal agency to do something with you anyhow, no matter what. They got the feel. So whoever was there who had the ability to say something recognized that I need to do this. That conscience came to the fore where it hadn't at first. And so I think it's proof, if anybody can gather, that we are all networked, we're all wireless, the universe is, the whole globe is, everything is wired together. And it depends on how you enter in. And how you enter in has been so consistent over the few years we have talked, met, known each other, that there is such a consistency in how you address things, because you're blending, even in the workshop, you can see the ability to calibrate fast, really fast, to gather and map out things and put it together well. And when that happens, I think all of us can gain from it and learn from it about be careful. I mean, I'm older and I've learned my lessons a lot of times and lots of mistakes. But here it's so important to take what we learn from a model who has been there, done that well, and know we can go back and talk to somebody, not store the pain or the hurt of, well, that's your opinion kind of thing, right?
yeah,
And particularly if you're working with a boss and you're not the boss, how do you go, or in relationships, personal relationships, I have heard too many people say, my family won't talk to me, or this one won't talk, or that one. And I always ask them, do you do anything on closing your eyes and imagining two of you together and have a loving soul to soul conversation where there's no judgment on your part about them and you do not accept judgment on their part about you? You just stay peaceful. And it's one of the reasons I wrote Soul Detective, because those are the things that kept happening in my life. And I thought, I have to take masculine, feminine, blend them, stop them from not interacting. And there's a situation I remember very little looking back that changed my life when I recognized how it inculcated. So people who don't trust your own intuition, listen up. A 2-year-old wants to make their own juice because everybody's sleeping. And they go to the refrigerator and they get the bottle and they climb up and get a glass and they're so proud and they pour it. I love it. I'm going to pour again with my other hand. And they're not ambidextrous naturally. These are right or left dominant. So pours it and oops, some of it goes on the floor. Mommy one, we'll call them mommy, could be anybody who's in charge there, gets up, goes in, looks and goes, ha, I just washed the floor. Now clean it up. Wait, if you could do that, you can go clean it. What you have just taught the child in any kind of circumstance that resonates inside about that is your intuition is never to be used for yourself because it's wrong. It causes trouble. You're not approved of, and I don't like it either. And I am your boss. Mommy too. Wow. Oh my God, you poured your own juice? Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's pretty. This is a gorgeous color. I like it better than the color on my floor. But let's get down on our knees and tell me what it looks like to you, because it looks like you just poured out a butterfly like
Yeah.
color in the sky.
Yeah.
That child trusts their intuition.
When my daughter was much younger, we drove by this house. It was in Manchester, Connecticut. She's like, "Oh, I've been in that house. I could tell you the layout of the house." I'm like, and I'm like, "Oh, is this one of your friends? I didn't know." She's like, "No, I had a dream of it." So I wasn't like, "You're out of your mind." You encourage it. Oh, that's awesome. And maybe
How old was
been
she?
want, I've been wanting her to follow that intuition, that gut, understand it, take classes, but in her own time,
How old is
because
she
she's
now?
she's 21 and she's kind of living life. She's just graduating
She's
college and
21. Right. How old was she when she had that dream?
oh, had to been seven, six
Okay.
or seven, young. Yeah.
So that's, folks, we're here. So we go from, this is us talking the way we always do. I've always written down my dreams that were lucid, very unusual. Other than that, if they were okay, I'd analyze them, maybe I'd write them. So about a week ago, I started putting together all the dreams I recalled to write a book, but it became more than a dream book because I analyzed all of it and yeah, yeah, yeah. And then it reminded me of a house. And I wasn't as young as her by far. I was an adult and I was giving a dream workshop. I probably was about 33, 32, and there were 20 people. And when it came, everybody was telling about one dream. Everybody was listening and listening to the person analyze their own and what resonates and anything else they pick up. They were playful. And we get to me and I describe a house in detail, farmhouse and X amount of rooms and yeah, yeah, yeah. And one woman looks at me and goes, "That's my home." I didn't know her. So I'm listening to your daughter who's 7 years old doing that, right?
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
knows and she had a dream about it and how common it may be and why. And I know that later on in life, when you are a little more grounded, right? And it could be a month later, you're more grounded. Who knows? When you're more settled and you are also more interested in your soul and spirit of life itself and how connected we all are, right? Whatever teaches us that, whatever life experience, that's when you begin to realize the seeds of things that happened that were out of the
Yep.
box of Earth
The
and
norm.
say,
Yeah.
Well, how does that work?" And that's
Yeah.
how all the people who wrote vibrational medicine years ago and all the current people are talking about quantum physics and how the consciousness continues after death a while and blah, 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 and all the rest of it is all being put together in language. But there were people, thousands of years, hundreds of years, tens of thousands, who understood all of it without arguing and without needing laboratories to prove it. But they could prove it in other ways, like describe a cave when you're a little kid during cave days and know about the little picture on it. But how'd they get that? The doggone uh, group, the doggone star, was on an outside of a cave with alien-looking creatures, and it's a tribe that sociologists have gone to, and they said that's a star. That's the people who came to us from that star. And ha 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 ha, until telescopes were able to see, and that was an exact star, right where they said it had never been known before that, but apparently it had. But we don't know, is it really people who, aliens or whatever, coming from another planet, or was it the connection that that tribe has with the galaxies and all the universes, and just pulling in, oh, that planet is over there, and putting cave and then putting pictures that they make up, who knows? But I believe it's all the connections, and you exemplify for me in law enforcement what those connections mean and how to use them best. Because I know a lot of people who've had these gut instincts well and did well, but you go much further than most I've met. Um, and a friend, a PI,
Hmm.
also does that. And generally speaking, I find that the ones who go much further have gone to other pathways of learning, whether it's metaphysics, martial arts, artistry, all kinds of things, when they really dig deep inside to get to know who they are. I
I
can't
wish,
thank you
I wish in,
enough.
I wish in Connecticut, Nance, that Connecticut does not allow you to hold a police certification and be a private investigator. It's illegal. They don't allow you to. And I know other states, I think in Florida they do.
Oh,
I
you know
wish
what?
that they,
Hold on. Wishing won't get it, but maybe having a conversation with Richard Pompelio will. So I'll put you two together because he's had bills passed in New Jersey that are unusual and also fabulous for crime victims and all kinds of things. You never know if you know people who know how to get we worked on a bill here in this state on something else, and we found how you get a bill to be sponsored and what it's about. And you have a perfect example of what needs to happen for people who want to go on, but they don't want to be part of the system any longer. They, in Virginia, they can do it. One of the men who came to one of the retreats, incredibly gifted also, was not a cop first, but he became a PI as a result of, working on these things. Once you get into the metaphysics of things and you have such a background in so many different ways, not only that, it means that the fact that you even mention it, you are being called to see what can happen in your state, whether it's for you or others to come. I believe that that's something that can be worked on. I know it can be worked on. I know what it takes. So Richard can tell you what it takes. I
yeah,
think that
yeah.
would be great. And I think we're going to stop this conversation because we've gone all over the place as usual.
Sorry.
And no, why are you apologizing? I love